Hey guys, okay, so for those of you that have watched my videos for a while, you'll know that I actually find a lot of importance in the transit of Venus. And there's a couple of reasons that I actually think that we need to pay attention to the transit of Venus. One reason is because for me, when I'm trying to understand what we can expect in the future in regards to Earth changes and cosmic events and even cataclysmic events, is that we need to look to our ancient wisdom keepers. And then this brings me to the Maya. Now, the Maya also found great importance in the transit of Venus. In fact, they probably watched Venus as much as they watched the sun. So I think that that is reason enough for us to also understand that the transit of Venus is something that is significant and something that we should pay attention to. Now, the other reason I also found the transit of Venus as something important is because I came across the research of a guy called Will Hart. And Will Hart has actually started correlating a lot of very cataclysmic events on our planet to the transit of Venus, that these events actually occurred in a year where Venus transited the sun. Now, one such event was the Krakatoa explosion. And most of you would know that that volcanic explosion was probably one of the most severe that we can remember in living memory. In fact, it was pretty much heard around the world 3 times. That's how intense this explosion was. So that happened in a year where there was the transit of Venus. Now, another event happened in 2004, and 2004 was also a year in which we saw the transit of Venus. And this is the year that we saw the Indonesian tsunami. And once again, that was an event that was pretty extreme. You know, we probably haven't experienced a tsunami that devastated so much coastline and so many communities and killed so many people in living memory once again. Now, it's also interesting to note that the transit of Venus comes in pairs. So the 2004 transit of Venus is paired with the 2012 transit of Venus, which is in June 4th and 5th, 4th and 5th. So anyway, so that's some interesting information and background information in regards to the transit of Venus. So what I decided to do was see if I could actually correlate the transit of Venus to other types of events, in particular solar storms and space weather. And I've hit pay dirt. I actually discovered that indeed we did have a very intense solar storm in 1882, and the storm was called the Transit of Venus Storm. So what I'll do is I'll read you some of the information that was published at that time in regards to this Transit of Venus storm. So this one says, all telegraphic transactions east of the Mississippi River and north of Washington, D.C. came to a halt. The Chicago stock market was severely affected all day. November 17, a superb aurora was witnessed, the culminating feature of which was the appearance at about 6 o'clock in the evening of a beam of greenish light in the shape of something like a cigar and many degrees in length, which rose in the east and crossed the sky at a pace much quicker than but nearly as even as that of the sun, moon, or stars, till it set in the west 2 minutes after its rising. So that in itself is a very interesting event. To have something that looks like a cigar move across the sky faster than the sun and the moon, I mean, that in itself says that there are certain events that we probably don't even truly fathom or understand that we can expect to happen when we are experiencing geomagnetic storms and anomalies. So here are some articles from newspapers around that time. So this one is from the New York Times, November 18, 1882. A storm of the century. Telegraph operation east of the Mississippi River and north of Washington, D.C. was severely affected. Wires with earth circuits were unusable, though systems using the newer metallic circuits were unaffected. Buried cables and above-ground cables were equally affected. People who attempted to use telephones heard buzzing or ringing noises. The Savannah Morning News, November 18, 1882. An electric storm, widespread disturbances. The impact of the storm was reported to be felt throughout the country. It is the worst storm of its kind in years and extends throughout the US and Canada. A report from New York says that Europe was also affected. The switchboard at Chicago Western Union office was set on fire several times, and much damage to equipment was done. From Milwaukee, the volunteer electric current was at one time strong enough to light up an electric lamp. Kansas City Evening Star, November 18, 1882. Enraged electricity, a wonderful storm that demoralized telegraph operators. The Chicago switchboard was on fire. Half a dozen keys on the instruments were melted. The storm covered the region north of Kansas beyond Omaha and New York. There was enough current in the Milwaukee lines to light a lamp. By 5 p.m., fewer than 500 words had been transmitted by the Associated Press. And then this one from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Intense magnetic storm. Skies were overcast, so no aurora could be seen because only Earth circuits were affected. No one that used a complete metallic circuit. It was claimed that the magnetic disturbances came from the Earth and not from the atmosphere. Interesting. And then this one here, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and this was on November the 20th. The magnetic storm. Storm extended from Boston and as far west as Ogden. Aurora very brilliant in Omaha. At St. Paul, the sky was blood red. Cheyenne reported a brilliance as bright as daylight. In Denver, the northern heavens were filled. It was also seen as far south as San Diego, California. And then we have the Omaha Herald, which was published November 19, 1882. The electric storm at Olympia, Washington Territory. The aurora was spectacular. San Francisco reported that the aurora could be seen from San Diego. The oldest residents of the state do not recall a previous display as brilliant. And then we have a report that's in the Science Journal. Now, the Science Journal is the publication that scientific papers are published in. And this one says, the magnetic storm and aurora, a collection of 23 accounts. The storm began on November the 16th from England and reached its climax on the morning of the 17th between 10 and 11 a.m. GMT. A remarkable sunspot was observed, the largest ever photographed from Greenwich. An observer in Edinburgh said that surely this event would convince even Simon Newcomb that the strong aurora would go along with the sunspot cycle. The most remarkable phenomenon was a rapidly moving shaft or cigar-shaped cloud that was observed streaking through the southern sky from England, and the following accounts are in Nature and describe this event and speculations by many of the observers about its cause. So isn't that very interesting, that anomaly? So I'm not saying that we can, actually experience this. It's nothing that is concrete that we're going to get one of these solar events as well. But what I'm saying is that we just need to take everything into account. We need to connect the dots and we need to prepare, because we've got to understand that this solar cycle 24 has been one that the sun has behaved in a way that scientists don't really understand. I mean, we've had the biggest CME that they've ever witnessed. We've got these magnetic filaments, these huge magnetic filaments that are millions of kilometers across that they've never actually observed on the sun before either. And we've also got the transit of Venus occurring in June on the 4th and the 5th. So all I'm saying is that we need to use this information to empower ourselves and understand that these events can happen and have happened in the past. But if they happen now, it's not just going to be telegraphic wires that are catching on fire, and this is just not going to be the extent of what we can expect if we have one of these storms of this intensity. We have to understand that everything is going to crumble. The whole matrix is based upon the electric grids, and once that goes, then this is going to be an event that many people will not survive if they're not prepared. So I just found it really interesting that this storm happened around the transit of Venus, that the mayor revered Venus and observed Venus intensely, especially the transits of Venus, and that we also have a transit of Venus in June this year that was paired with the 2004 transit of Venus. So I will post this link underneath and you can have a look at it all if you like. But I just found it all really interesting, and once again, it's just a matter of connecting dots and trying to understand what these changes are on our sun and what we may expect in these times in regards to changes on our planet and changes in the cosmos. So anyway, guys, thanks for listening and peace out.